Hi, Peter Charles here, folks for Life Fly Fishing. And today we're going to look at a casting problem called tracking. And what tracking is being able to get your rod to move in a straight line forward and back as you're making your cast, and also trying to get your rod tip traveling in as straight a line as possible. The benefits to being able to track well is you get greater accuracy, you get better loop shape, tighter loops, you're able to handle wind a lot better, you get better distance casting, and just generally better control. Everything goes where it's supposed to, and you're less likely to hit yourself, which is a good thing. So I've got a video here. I'm going to get it started, and we're going to look at this initial bit. This has been slowed down 50%. And you can see how my wrist is kind of rolled out a little bit. The fighting butt is not below my forearm, but it's off to the side. And you can see the plane of the cast is off at about a 45-degree angle. So I'm not trying to cast at a 45-degree angle. I'm trying to cast almost vertically. And yet, because my wrist is a little sloppy, I'm off to the side. And now it's going to get worse. I'm rolling the wrist even more. And look at that cast. It's way out there. And now my back cast is now almost horizontal. Pretty close. So when you've got cast like that, there's your problem, right? That wrist is rolled out. Now I'm going to roll my wrist the other way, and the rod is going behind my head, which is a term we call hooking. And the rod is going behind my head. You can see by that yellow arrow, and we got that one right there. You can see that the actual point of the back cast is on my left. I'm casting right-handed, it's on my left. And look at the line. Let's back up. You should be able to see it against a brick wall a little bit better. Oh, we'll go forward instead. And I'll just go forward. I mean, that line's almost straight up in the air, the back cast. So you've got a line that looks like this, or a check mark almost. And that's, that roll of the wrist like that is creating this check mark back cast. If you had a tailing wind, it would blow that right over. So now we're going to look at some tracking head on. And now I'm just going to talk about the camera position first. What I've done is I've put a camera on a GorillaPod, and I put it very low down, just almost in the snow. And I'm aiming at a point that's about 4 or 5 feet in front of the camera, so the fluffy is visible when it lands. And the whole idea behind this angle is so I can see the full tracking of my rod and what my line is doing. With that backdrop of the brick wall, I can see the shape of my line and know what the back cast looks like. So there you see, this is a good one. It landed right in my target area. And I'll drop another one in there, bounced a little bit. Now we're going to do some bad ones. You see my rod tip is tracking all over the place, and we're not getting anything resembling accurate. This one gets a little bit better. That's because my back cast wasn't bad. So terrible check mark. Now we're just going to step through and look at this line. Remember what I said about no power and trouble with wind? There's your evidence right there. With that rolling wrist on the back cast, I've created a sloppy back cast, and coming forward, my forward cast has no power. So when we go down, I just back up a little bit. Look at the leader, right in here. Look at that leader. It just ends up in a pile. So, accuracy goes right out the window. So now I've gone off to the side, and predictably, the cast went off to the side. And you can see there was a bit of on my right hand, a wind coming from my right side. So it was blowing in the view of the camera, it's blowing everything to the right. So you can see how that one came back. But, it's not accurate. It's not even close. Oh, wow. Let's look at that one. Let's back up. Look at that nice letter C. Horrible, horrible back cast. No power in the forward cast. And predictably, no accuracy either. And you notice how it went in a semicircle. So the cast was off on my left side and came around, and then the line went to the left side. So my rod went in a big arc, and the fly line followed it. And that's the problem with tracking. If your rod is doing any kind of weird stuff, your line will do weird stuff because your line follows the rod. And that's a perfect example. If we back up, let's see, you can see the cast is coming down on my left side, right on the screen. But you can see it's starting way over here. You see how far the cast is to my right. Okay, and then if we just keep going backwards, you can see it's over on my left. The point of the back cast is on my left. So it's gone left all the way to the right and then comes back. Perfect example of how your rod follows the path of the rod. Your line follows the path of the rod tip. And predictably, it's nowhere close. It's one of the worst casts. I pulled off to the right, my right, and then I tried to straighten up coming forward, and I got a little close. Again, same idea. I pull off a little bit to the right, and then I try and correct. So that one was a good lift. Let's back up. You'll see that lift started off pretty good. I didn't go sideways on the lift. You can see as I go forward, that's not bad. Nice and straight. And then the wrist goes inward and the rod goes behind the head. As my wrist goes like that, and away goes the line. And there's no power in that cast whatsoever, just fluttered out of the air. We'll just look at a few more here and you can see they are pretty bad. There we go. Look at that for terrible accuracy. That's what happens when you don't track the rod well. And you also see a lot of those casts just fluttered out of the air. They didn't turn over straight. In the ones where I was casting accurately, leader turned over straight. In the ones that were not done well, where the tracking was poor, the leader just fluttered out of the air, and the cast not only were off to the side, but they fell short too. So, you know, you're losing all around. You're not getting the distance, you're not getting the accuracy. So that is tracking. That's what tracking is all about. Getting the rod tip to go in a straight line, because if it doesn't, that's the way the cast will go. So, if you want to learn to track straight, here's how you solve it. You know how I put that camera down on a little GorillaPod right low to the ground? You do that, and if you want, you can set a target up about, let's say, 3 feet in front of the camera. And then you get directly in front of the camera, maybe 25 feet further back, and you aim at the target. And you make sure your backdrop is uncluttered so you can see your line. And you'll see if your rod is going off to this way, off to that way. And it's very handy if you use a rod with a fighting butt, because you can see when you are casting, as if your wrist is turning, you can see that fighting butt going in different directions. And it's going the opposite of your rod tip. So if the fighting butt's going that way, your rod tip's going that way. So you could just look at your fighting butt and you can see which way it's going. And if you don't have a rod with a fighting butt, put some yellow tape around the butt of the rod and you'll be able to see which way it's going. Wear dark clothing, it'll show up. So the combination of the fighting butt or yellow tape and a camera and a good, flat surface behind you that you can use as a backdrop, you'll be able to see whether you're tracking or not. And now to get practicing, now you know you're doing it wrong, the thing is to pay attention to your wrist. See what your wrist is doing. And you can, I actually tell my students, watch your wrist. Actually sit there and look at your wrist and see what it's doing. And the other thing too is what I've often done is I'll put a neoprene strap around the person's wrist to trap the butt against their hand. To get them to stop doing it. The trouble is often when you take the strap off, they go back to this business. The thing is to be aware of it and to watch. And the other thing is when you want to start, you can start like this, straight down your nose. And that way you start to get the idea. You can see your wrist is in front of you the whole time. You can see what your wrist is doing. It's much easier. And then you can move off to the side when you start to get your wrist vertical and it's no longer going all over the place. So that's the method to get good tracking. That's the way to practice, and that's the way to find out. So give it a try. If you're having problems with accuracy or distance or power, trouble with wind, probably in your tracking. So get a camera out, try it, have a look. Cheers.